Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Oh dear, that was an effort. Getting round there. Right.
Good afternoon, everybody. Lovely all here. It's a full church.
How
For a very
lovely.
long time this church has seen a full church, I should think.
Oh, don't say that.
I'm Victoria Mather. I'm a journalist and broadcaster. We have the great privilege this afternoon of having with us Dame Sheila Hancock, who was born in the Isle of Wight. Her parents had the pub at Blackgang Chine. She was once told off for wearing shorts when she was a grown-up in Sandown, when she was in Repertory there. She performed on the end of the pier, at the end of a pier show with Cyril Fletcher, and she worked in Parkhurst Prison when, as an RSC director, Royal Shakespeare Company, she came to do a workshop with the prisoners. So please, would you give Dame Sheila a very big welcome.
Thank you very much. Thanks very much. My dad didn't run a pub. He just happened to be working at the Blackgang Chine Hotel, which was before it became this. It's a big funfair place now, isn't it? And it was the photos I've seen. We left almost immediately. I was born, but there was this bleak place, and there was a skeleton of a whale. Nobody's old enough to remember that, I'm sure. Do you remember it? In the Blackgang Chine. And then in the hotel, there was a rather sad little hotel, and that's where I was born. But I have worked here a lot since, but maybe we'll talk about that later.
Sheila's book is called Old Rage, and it is a marvellous book and very funny, very pithy, and it has got a great deal of anger in it, but also sadness, humour, and humanity. Sheila, have you always been an angry young woman?
No, I was a very frightened young woman when I was young. I don't think I was, but oh yes, I was. Actually, I do remember when I was evacuated, I did learn to fight because they hated us vackies, and I used to beat them up. But it was, I on the whole, because I'm a wartime child, and I lived through the Blitz, and I lived through being evacuated. They put a label on me and my gas mask and sent me God knows where when I was 7, 8. So I spent most of my time being pretty scared. And if I was aggressive, it was usually in self-defense, but maybe I quite enjoyed it. But I've always been very tentative and very unsure. I'm sitting here now thinking, this is bizarre. Why have I been asked here to do this? Because I never think I'm kind of important. When you said Dame Sheila Hancock, I was about to say no, because I forget about the Dame. I never use it, you know. But now, on my way out, I'm 90 now, and that's very old, and I will be going soon, I know that, and I am very angry because I'm looking at a world that I'm not enjoying and not liking, and I'm looking at a country that I'm ashamed of, and I want things to get better, and I've only got a very short time to do my part in trying to make things a little bit better.
Your father used to say, it's down
Yes,
to
I'll
you.
tell you that story about that. You asked me earlier what drives me, and I have a memory of after the war. Is anybody as old as me? Hands up if anybody's... You are? Great. Anybody else? 90? Anybody 80 going? 80 going?
Quite
Few
a lot
of you. Well, things were very different back then. And after the war, the revelation of Belgium was absolutely appalling and shocking. And I remember my dad, who was a very good man. There's a shortage of good people, aren't there? But he was a good man. And he showed me, I was 11 then, and he showed me some of the pictures. And I remember there was one picture of a little boy naked standing up on a table with some Nazi officers and Mengele who did experiments on children and all sorts of people in the camps. And it was the most terrifying picture. And my dad said to me, "This must never happen again, and it's down to you." And that's haunted me for the rest of the life. So if you find me aggressive, if you find me angry and sad, it is because I do feel it's down to me. And I do it to my grandchildren, I'm afraid. I mean, I say it to them because the world is in a hell of a state now. And I said, it's got to be sorted and it's down to you. And when people tell me that they don't listen to the news because it's so upsetting, I say, no, you must. You have to listen. You have to take part. You have to contributing in making it better. So that's that story.
Do you think quite part of the anger comes from, it's fear-based because, I mean, regarding your acting career, rather than your political activism, you said, I always felt an also-ran in my profession, which is sort of odd for somebody who played with Harold Pinter, acted with Harold Pinter and was a friend, and who've acted with all the greats, who were married to the late and great John Thaw. You have a huge standing within your profession.
Yes, but I mean, like my husband, we always thought that we were just getting away with it. We've been working actors. I'm a working actress. I've done loads of awful rubbish because I needed the money, simple as that. I remember I did a terrible film called, I blush when I think of it now. I think it was called Wildcats of St. Trinian's. But I actually dared to play the head mistress, which had previously been played by Alistair Sim brilliantly. And for some ungodly reason, I decided to play it Dutch. No idea why. And I took this terrible script, all tits and arses and all the St. Trinian's things, to the Dutch embassy and asked them to help me with the accent. I can't believe what they made of it. It's one of the worst films ever, ever, ever. And in fact, my PA says that on the website, somebody said, I think it was called Wildcats of St. Trinian's, why? And I told her to say, the money. Simple as that. And I've done quite a lot of things like that. And I think people, I got a letter the other day from somebody who wants to go on the stage. And they say, you know, they've never felt so alive as when they did this play at the local hall, and it was wonderful. They knew that this was for them, and it made them feel so happy, and they glowed. And I've written a very sour letter back saying, listen, you're talking about doing a job, doing a profession, not having a party, not having endless success, not being clapped and cheered. And a lot of out of work, a lot of hunger. And, you know, don't think that it's a glorious, happy thing. I've suffered from stage fright all my life, and I actually haven't really enjoyed acting very much. And in fact, I regret that. And I say this as an advice to all of you, to try and cherish the moment, because I did a thing during lockdown. Chichester Theatre were trying to raise money because, you know, theatres have suffered terribly from all this. And they did some streaming, and they asked me to do an interview about my musical theatre career. And I said, what musical theatre career? Anyway, they insisted, and I was interviewed by a man who really knew a lot about musical theatre. And he had got together endless tapes of me in various musicals over the period. And I never listened to myself or watched myself. I can't bear it. But anyway, I had to, because I was in front of a camera. And there was one particular sound cue thing that he did, which was Sweeney Todd, because I was in the original production of Sweeney Todd at Drury Lane, playing the lead. And terrified the whole time. Steve Sondheim, everything, frightening. But he got this tape of the last night, and I heard my music cue on the tape, and then I heard this massive amount of audience cheering, calling my name, clapping, And then you hear me on the tape saying, "Go quiet, be quiet, I can't hear the band, shut up, I can't hear the band." And shall I start again and having a conversation with the audience? And I look back on that and think, how lucky am I that that audience loved me as much as that? And that why the hell haven't I appreciated and been grateful for that? And I think that can apply in life. You know, people do lovely things and people love you. And it passes by without you saying, God, that person is really loving me, is really being kind to me. And they are the best things in life, those moments. And I've ridden over them too much. I'm changing a bit now. I'm enjoying your dress, and I'm enjoying, you know what I mean? Really, really trying to live the moment. Not just say, oh yes, I always live the moment, but really, there's a nice glass of water there. I might have a drink afterwards. Do you know what I mean? Just cherish the moment.
You've had some moments which were now really extinct in modern theatre. We don't really have repertory companies any longer. And you did a long stint, you're all proper actress, you did a long stint in rep. There's a marvellous quote in the book about Repertory in Oldham, about the fact that the dressing rooms had no heating and broken light bulbs. Before entering, you had to bang on the door to tell the mice that their shift was over and they should stop eating the grease paint.
It was a nightmare. I did weekly rep at Shanklin. Shanklin Town Hall was a weekly rep thing in the 50s. And at those days, some of the 80-year-olds may remember this, there was a very slow ferry that came over, I think, about twice a day. And it was like coming to Alcatraz, honestly. It was awful to be an actor over here. They wrote, the shorts thing was, somebody wrote to the company saying, would Miss Hancock not wear shorts in the high street? I mean, they weren't very short shorts, but and they were so condemning of us. But the one lovely thing happened. There was somebody from a very established family in Shanklin that I won't name, but he suddenly realised he was gay and he fell in love with our juvenile character man, and he left with him and lived his life properly. Because there were this troupe of actors in the middle of an unbelievably straight-laced island it was at that time. It's hard to believe that. I imagine now, it can't be a straight-laced now, but...
Oh, I don't know.
Really? But it really was. It was like being in prison, or like Parkhurst, actually. But then I did Masquerade. I did Cyril Fletcher. I had this concert party on the pier at... Is there still a pier?
There's still one in Ryde, yes.
No, but what's the place next to Shanklin? Sandown. Is there a pier there? Is there a theatre on it? Is it gone? Completely gone? Into the sea? Really? Well, we used to do 5 shows a week, and I'd never done concert party. And I took the place of Cyril Fletcher's wife, whom he adored. And I was really bad in it. And I was doing all her numbers. And I could see him looking at me thinking, oh, God, I wish it was Betty. But I remember there was one classic occasion when we, at the end of the first half, there was always this thing called a Shana. And it was a Cockney scene and a French scene and American scene and all sorts of different things. And I would, 5 shows I had to know, the sketches, the numbers, the dances, everything. And I was always confused. I never, ever, ever knew what was happening next. And the lady that I shared the dressing room used to say, no, it's the Cockney one this year. Anyway, one day I put on my thing that would be totally unacceptable now, a red Indian outfit with feathers and God knows what. Went on the stage, ready to do my, and it was the Cockney Shana. So I did any evening, any day, dressed with feathers and a tomahawk. Unbelievable, because Cyril was so angry. And the opening number was, I never learnt it because it was sung ensemble and I didn't have to know it. And the number, and it went something about, Masquerade is here, that's the name of the show. Masquerade is here tonight, and in the morning, and it went on. I never discovered what happened in the morning because I was just mouthing it. I thought, I can't learn that. I've got so much else to learn. Nightmare. But Cyril was the most wonderful man. I learned so much from him. Do you remember Cyril Fletcher?
Yeah.
He was such a clever man. Such a clever man.
You said that you didn't, that looking back, you haven't really enjoyed being an actor. But there are spin-offs from having success as an actor, which I wonder if you do enjoy. And for instance, I enjoy you very, very much on Just a Minute. It's one of my favourite shows. And that came your way. She's quick, you know, on that Just a Minute.
Yeah, I haven't done it recently, and I don't know whether I could because I'm slowing down with old age, and you have to be really on the ball. No, I'm lucky because my career has expanded into more interesting things than just doing plays. And in my day, girls were very restricted. I mean, the parts that you played were very limited. Not in Weekly Rep, you played everything, but I couldn't be. I was very tall, not very attractive, Cockney accent to begin with, which I got rid of when I went to RADA, but the parts were incredibly limited and boring, and actors weren't as involved with the subject matter as they are now. Now, whenever anybody asks to be an actor to me, I always say, go to university and get a degree first, because you have to be knowledgeable. If you do a play about anything, you have to know how to research it. You have to be able to reproduce things. You have to have an extraordinary knowledge. When I went to the RSC when I was over 40, I think I was about the only person that hadn't been to uni. And they were all at rehearsals quoting this famous man called Jan Kott, who analyses Shakespeare. I'd never heard of him. I had to go and sort of look it all up. But I think you do have to be well educated to be a proper actor.
You say in the book that when you got to the RSC, you were 40, and you felt you'd missed out on the young parts, Hermia, Titania. You'd missed out on those Rosalind, those young roles, and you do seem to put that down to the fact that you feel that you were uneducated because you hadn't been to university.
Yes, I certainly had an inferiority complex, but I think also that in those days, those parts were played by pretty actresses, middle-class actresses with very, very conventional approach. And I wasn't. And it was when the Juliet Stevensons came along and all the lovely people that we've got now, Vanessa Dyrig, tall people, suddenly things began to change. And most importantly, Joan Littlewood at Stratford East, who suddenly gave people from the working class leading roles, people like Harry Corbett, who went on to do Steptoe and Son. He played Henry V, which would have been unheard of in those days. It was a class thing. I'll tell you quickly a story that is absolutely true, just happened to me recently. I was asked to go on the Today programme. It was the centenary year, and they were looking at archives. They came across a lot of letters from me when I was young, which I have no memory of writing, but the first letter was in 1949, and it's me saying, dear sir, because it never occurred to me that a casting director could be a woman in those days. Dear sir, I am going to go to the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art, and I would like you to give me an audition. Yours faithfully, Sheila Hancock. And then there's another one later on when I came out of RADA saying, I am now appearing in weekly Repertory and I would like an audition. And there's about 5 letters getting increasingly a bit irritated that obviously I wasn't reacted to. But then eventually in the late 60s, no, in the middle 60s, there's a report of my audition in the archives, which I knew nothing about. And there was a lot of stuff. But one of the things it said, voice, a little too much effort. So I thought, thank you, RADA. But then there was this thing called tone. And it said, could pass as educated. And at the end, acting, A, which was the top mark. And the remark was, could possibly be useful in juvenile character. Now, juvenile character was maids, small parts, character parts. It never occurred to them that a girl from my background, looking the way I did, could play a lead. Just didn't happen. And then when in comedy, when I came into doing a lot of comedy shows, I did The Rag Trade and Betsy.
Carry On Clear, where you were Zena Pod.
That was a film, a film. But you know, those things came along, and I always played the sort of cockney, daft, blonde creature. And then what happened was people like Dawn and Jennifer, Dawn French and Jennifer came along, and Victoria, of course, wrote their own material. Suddenly, girls were writing about girls, and they could be vulgar. But that was the thing. The men never wanted us to be rather vulgar. Do you know what I mean? The high-ups at BBC, I had a terrible row once. I wanted to do a sketch where I was a kind of mad, prejudiced landlady, but it was a very ugly character. And my director said I couldn't do it. And I said, well, I am going to do it because I've done it in review and it's very funny, it works well. And he said, no, you can't, it'll destroy your image. Because my image was as a blonde, lovely lady. And I said, well, I'm going to do it anyway. I worked my way, and he said, well, you're going to have to ask the head of comedy, which I did, and I think that was Attenborough at that time. And Attenborough said, well, I don't know if the director doesn't want you to do it. And then I went to Hugh Weldon at the very top. He was the head managing director. And I said, I want to do this sketch. And he said, well, I tell you what, I'll let you do it in front of the studio audience, because we had an audience in those days. And if it goes well, then it can stay in. Well, it went like a bomb, and it stayed in, and I didn't work for the BBC for 10 years after that. I was blacklisted as being difficult, because I spoke up, and you just didn't in those days. It's interesting because a lot of the people at the top of the BBC had come out of the army. There were a lot of ex-colonels and ex-officers and, you know, no women, none at all. So they had this image of what womankind was like, and I was kind of trapped in that, in a way. But I'm not complaining, I've been bloody lucky.
There was Grace Wyndham Goldie, wasn't there, at one point?
Yeah, that was radio.
Yes,
she was
that was only radio. Your political views have always been, you know, part of the warp and weft of your character. Do you think that comes from your upbringing, from, again, from your father saying, it's up to you? And do you think it's essential that we all have a political soul?
No, I've got a campaign going. I want to get rid of the two-party system. I think that's causing such mayhem in our country. People are obeying the party line rather than what's good for the country, doing absurd things because it's...
A bit crumpled, but it's
okay. Thank you very much. It's what they've been told to do, and the various factions, the extreme right, the extreme left. What's going on? What's going on? And I visualise a time when we will have people in Parliament who want to be there because they want to make the country a better place, and they know something. They know something about life. After the war, we had Attlee, who had people like Aneurin Bevan and Morrison, and amazing people who'd lived a life and would, some of them genuinely working class, but very educated and intelligent. They wanted to change the world, and they did. They did, literally. I mean, for people like me, I was coming from a sort of relatively poor working class, to be able to go to the doctors without paying was a miracle. And I had got a scholarship to grammar school, but then it became free to go to grammar school. And it was revolutionary. None of you can believe how wonderful it was, that change of those people. But they had a mission, and they didn't lie. We now have people who lie and cheat and just make up three-word slogans, and sometimes we're foolish enough to believe them. And I visualise turning into a museum, Westminster, and having a circular chamber, none of this opposition stuff with them all shouting at one another. And I think they could be voted for by the local. This is my plan. I'm going to work it out a bit better than this. When I present it, it'll be a bit better. But you know, candidates are chosen, aren't they, by the Tory party and the Labour Party, local people, they choose them. So instead of that, I'd have local people choosing somebody, there'd be a selection committee, somebody that they think will represent not only the constituency, but have something to contribute to an all-over improvement for the world.
But who do you think would want to be a politician?
Well, they would, because they want to change the world. They're doing it because they want to, not because they want to have work on the side and do whatever this lot want to do. No, they would do it. We would have a parliament
because they had a sense
full
of
of
duty.
people there. Yeah, a duty. And they'd be paid. They have to be paid. Of course they have to be paid. But I just think to have a discussion rather than point scoring, to not allow ludicrous people to be in charge of us. I've never known in all my life so many second, third, fourth-rate people being in charge. We've come to accept lies. There was a time when Boris Johnson would say something that was blatantly, obviously untrue, and you'd say something, and they say, oh, it's just Boris. Just he's Prime Minister. Do you know what I mean? And then we have a woman that's there for a few days, and it's just so awful. We've got the wrong people there. And I think we ought to, and and this is what I want you to do. I don't care what you do, what you write, but I want you to communicate with your local MP, because every time they say things like, my constituents are telling me, or the country wants, I swear it's two people in the office. If you disapprove of something, even if it's something that I would approve of, write to them. Let them know that they're representing you. They're not just there having a party. I mean, I go to the House of Parliament, and it's like a lovely club. They all have a wonderful time. And I think it's time. I do think, I'm sounding awful now, and I'm just an ignorant actress, and I'm willing to admit this, but I do think democracy is threatened at the moment. I really do. If Trump gets in America, and we have the people that we've got in charge here, I think democracy has got to look at itself and adapt itself and change it necessarily, but stick to the basic principles of everybody being important. Do you know what I mean? And I just worry that before I die, it won't begin to happen, because it's not happening now. It's not happening. People are complaining about roads being closed because they can't take their kids to the school in their 4x4. We have a major planetary problem. We are killing our planet, honestly. We really are. It's desperately dangerous. There's going to be loads of people without a country to live in. There's already islands that have had to be deserted. But there will be countries that can no longer produce food or water or anything. It's mega. Read it. Don't be frightened of it. Look into it. I may be wrong, but educate yourselves about it so you can speak up about it, locally and everywhere else. Let it be known that you're watching. I do prison visits quite a lot, and the only reason I do it is because I want it to be known that we're watching what's going on in a close community. But I do beg you not to give up. I've got about 2 years, if I'm lucky, maybe a few more, if I carry on doing my exercises. But I keep getting new illnesses. Shall I tell you about my illnesses? If you join the queue at the end, you can tell me your illnesses. And I know all of them. Honestly, I know all of them.
I know you're a very brave woman.
I'm not brave at all. I'm just determined to carry on. But my main one is rheumatoid arthritis. Anybody who's got rheumatoid arthritis, speak to me afterwards. I'll tell you all the drugs and things that you should be taking. But then another lovely thing happened to me. I'll tell you, first of all, I had an accident recently. And this is so foolish, it's so foolish. You know how you have a fall when you're older? You don't fall over, you have a fall. So I was sitting on my toilet, washing my feet in the bidet, okay? And for some reason, I stood up with soapy feet, fall up, voila, on the floor. Okay. So I've got this watch, very expensive watch, which is supposed to say, you look as though you've had a fall, do you need help? And if you don't reply, then it sends help. It did nothing. And I thought, well, I'll poke it. My hand was hanging. You can see there. It was hanging. So I couldn't even poke the damn thing. Anyway, eventually I shuffled over on my bottom and managed to find my phone. So that was my first thing, my first major crisis with this thing. Now, if I bang this hard enough, it will say, you've had an accident, do you need help? You've got one as well. Constantly, doesn't it? It says, do you need help? You have to say, no, I'm all right, for God's sake. But one good thing it did, it kept flashing up. Your heartbeat is a bit odd. You could have, it didn't say it in those words, but you could have something called atrial fibrillation or something. So I thought, oh, be quiet, watch. You didn't help me with the fall. I'm not going to take any notice. Anyway, I went to my GP about something else. And I said, my watch keeps... She said, what? So they then put a 24-hour thing on me. And I have indeed got this thing called atrial fibrillation. Anybody got it? Know how to pronounce it? Well, that. And I had to take the odd... I've got the pills there. If my heart starts banging, I'll start taking them. And he said... And when I went to see the specialist, he said, that watch has probably saved your life because once you know you've got that, you have to go on these damn blood thinners. Mind you, you bleed to death if you cut yourself. It's a choice. It's a toss-up, actually. I'm at the moment tossing up in my mind. I've got a cut on my legs. And I think, now, which do I prefer, having that? And I've got a friend who's having a brain scan at the moment because she takes this medicine and she fell over, so they have to do... It's also growing old. Don't do it. Don't do it. Really don't do it. It's a nightmare. But it's a challenge. I quite enjoy the challenge. I mean, I got here, didn't I? And I got up the steps with a bit of help.
You most definitely did.
You're there.
And, but you had great admiration. Given your political views, I'm very surprised you're not a Republican, and yet you had your account in the book of your reaction to the Queen's death. I found very touching, particularly when you went to stand to watch the coffin go past.
Yeah, well, what happened... Yes, I have to say, I'm jolly glad we got Prince Charles at the moment. Well, he's not, he's king, isn't he? Whatever he is. Charles at the moment, because he's one of the most cultured men, and we haven't got many of those. And for my profession, is somebody... I mean, the culture minister that we had for a few days, she tried to close down the ENO, the BBC, Channel 4, cut grants from really wonderful theatres all over the country. Never been to a theatre in her life. I think she writes airport novels or something, but a nightmare. But Charles is very informed about the theatre and music and all sorts, and majorly the environment. He is one of the most knowledgeable men there are about the environment. So therefore, I'm jolly glad they're there. Every bit of me should really, because I'm such a demon for equality, and I should think it's ludicrous to have some people with a great deal of wealth and kowtowing to them. But I did so like the Queen. I mean, during the war, she was wonderful, and as a child, she used to send us messages, and when we were evacuated, I remember that, and she was a little girl then, quite a little girl. And the Queen Mother, I always remember after a raid, there was always pictures of the Queen Mother in furs and things, walking over the blitzed buildings. Do you remember her, the Queen, our Queen's mother? And she was terribly glamorous, and she obviously dressed up to go to the bomb sites. And I remember her saying she was really pleased when Buckingham Palace was hit because she joined the people in the East End. So all that, when you've grown up with people behaving like that, it's very difficult to say, get rid of them. And when the Queen died, I was doing a live broadcast, live television, and they came and whispered in the break that it looked like there was something happening to the Queen, so be careful what you say and all that. And then I went into the wings in the next break. It was that lunchtime program. And there was a young girl there, and I was obviously looking very nervy and upset. And I said, what is it? What is it? And she said, oh, I think the Queen's dying. And she said, oh, don't worry, Sheila, she's an old woman. And I thought, that's the future. Do you know what I mean? That's reality. This grizzling idiot was not, but I did feel very pained about it. And I watched all the services. I thought the Scottish ones were so much better than us. The simplicity and that wonderful drive from Balmoral, and then coming to the A40 in London, which is the worst road in the world. I thought they did it better. But then when they had the big ceremony, I live on the main motorway to the airport and Windsor. And we knew that it was going to be passing us. And we knew partly because our roads started getting cleaned up. They even painted the lampposts. And the bits in the middle. I mean, it's a horrible road, but we thought, hello, looks like something's going to come down our way. So when the stuff had finished in London, a few of us had some champagne and went and stood by the roadside to see if it was going to come past us on the way to Windsor. And indeed, suddenly, a load of cars came by, including our now king and the royal family, very fast, to Windsor, because they were way behind schedule. And obviously, they had a big ceremony going on there, way past. And we were all going, was that her? Did anybody see, was the hearse on that? None of us knew whether we'd seen it. We were about to give up. And suddenly everybody said, stop. And in the distance, there was one car. I feel quite sad thinking of it. There was one car with flowers that had been thrown over it, so it was obviously the hearse. And they obviously weren't going to race her to Windsor in the hearse. On its own, this car came very slowly past these people, saw our lampposts and went on. And as she went by, I just said, goodbye, darling. And I felt really a great ache and a sort of slightly ominous feeling. We all felt a bit safe with her, didn't we? I mean, she was, God knows what went on in her mind, because she was blank usually. But that meant that you could impose things on her and think, oh, she's feeling sad. That dreadful picture of her sitting on her own when Philip died, and she's sitting in the church on her own, and we now discovered that there were parties going on. I think that's what finally finished me with this lot. Downing Street were having a big lark the night before. But anyway, that was the end of it for me, and I think Charles is doing pretty well.
You make a very good point about the Queen in the book, that she made an extraordinary job of being ordinary, which is incredibly reassuring.
She did. And she was a sort of woman that I really like. There's a lot of them here that have organised this festival. Do you know that kind of middle-class women who get things done? You can rely on them. However boring the job is, there's somebody, I'll do that, darling. And off they go and they do it. And I think they're a really good, and any school, I work in schools quite a bit, and any school, there's always a couple of those women who organise things to buy pencils, and I don't know, they're just the salt of the earth. And she kind of represented that, awful clothes. She'd never had, her fashion hardly changed. Her hair was the same when she was a child to the day she died. And I just think,
well,
that,
I like
there was
that,
a rather solidity about that.
I hate change. And I think, do you feel now that change is something which is not good, which is challenging, which is very hard? It's a challenge. I mean, how do you get on with, for instance, if you have to ring the gas board? Not the gas board exists, and I mean, you get a man with somebody saying that your call is important to them, and you have to hang on for 25 minutes.
Yes, I loathe all that. I loathe the fact that my children now don't phone me, they text me. And it's always inaccurate, because it's that text, you know, it corrects itself, and it all corrects itself wrongly. So I spend hours trying to understand what they mean, and then I discover they don't mean that at all, it was the wrong word. And then they send a picture of a face, an emoji or whatever it's called, crying. What's that meant to mean? Is it crying with laughter, crying with something terrible happened? I think we're not going to be able to talk soon. We're not going to have people on stations telling us where to buy the tickets. We won't have guards on phones. We already haven't got people in shops, we've got machines. Do you know what I mean? We're going to lose the power of speech if we're not very careful. But people do want to get together. I mean, that's the great thing about theatre. I went to the Proms a lot this year and see a load of people together joyously enjoying something absolutely beautiful was so uplifting. And any opportunity that people have to get together, they seize it. So get together and let's change things. Change is inevitable. We change all the way through life. You change from being a child to an adult to being married or partnered, or then you have children. And then one of the worst changes I'm finding is accepting old age. I haven't really accepted it until my 90th birthday. And suddenly I think, oh no, I don't think I can do that anymore. I think I'm going to have to cut back on that. But then I think the secret is that you immediately find something to take its place. Do you know what I mean? If something, part of your life changes, if somebody leaves you or dies, which has happened to me twice, you grieve, and you can choose to grieve for the rest of your life. I think that's valid. Some people do that and live a perfectly good life. But you can also decide to have a new life, decide to start again, and change your life. Change can be terribly exciting. And that's why this upsets me, because with COVID, all sorts of things happened. We all learned that we liked being at home. We all learned that we didn't like working in a nasty office and going on the tube all day. We all learned, I learned that blackbirds can imitate one another. I actually noticed nature. All sorts of wonderful things. We could have gone on to a better way of life. And we haven't. We haven't. And not yet.
Well, on that slightly unhappy note, I'm going to... I'm sure you've all got questions to ask Sheila. And so we have got a roving microphone, and I'm going to open the floor so that you can all have your conversation with one of the most interesting women of our times.
Oh, God, about that. But if there's something that you want to say, if you're angry with me or any of that, come to the queue, because I do love engaging with people when I get you one-to-one. And sometimes people think, oh, I don't want to say I've got rheumatoid arthritis in front of all those people. But you might tell me in my ear, and I can give you a very good drug. Or a very good doctor.
Go on, who's going to go first? Gentleman at the back.
I'm just curious. Recently, Michael Gambon passed away, bless his heart. And he was always complaining he never learned his lines. He always struggled to learn his lines.
Yes.
Did you have problems? Did you have
funnily enough,
learning lines problems?
There's a chapter in the book of a frightful thing that happened to me recently. Well, not recently, but a couple of years ago. Actors have it often, but when you get older, you take it more seriously. I was filming, I think it was a thing called, it was about witches, a thing on Sky Television. I can't remember what it's called, but anyway, I was a witch. Yes, that. I had a pointy hat, and I loved it. And anyway, I had the first scene with the leading man, and I hadn't met him on the set before, and it was a very witchy scene with lots of spelly stuff going on. Anyway, I came on and said my first line, and then dried, what we call dried, stone dead. Absolutely no idea. Somebody prompted me, one of the crew prompted me, and I did it. I tried again and again and again and again. Complete blank. I didn't know where I was, who I was, what my name was. And I promise you, this happens to actors very often in the long run. They suddenly wake up and think, oh, what do I say next? You know, and I had this dreadful, dreadful day, and they held my script up for me eventually, which a lot of actors do. I mean, Marlon Brando, the reason Marlon Brando hesitates so much is he's looking at the cue cards. But they hold up the cue, and I did it with that. But the next day, I went back and thought, okay, that's it. It's time to retire. I can't learn anymore. And then I had a drink and looked at my lines for the next day, and I went in and I was all right, it had passed. But a lot of actors, and I remember meeting Mike Gambon. We were going for a medical, but before you do a film, you have to have a medical. And he was doing, and there's a famous man in Sloane Square that we all go to. We were chatting, and I've known him for years, a bit. He's not my best friend, but a bit. And I've always loved him. He's very funny. And he was very down and very odd. And then he confided in me that he was losing it. He couldn't learn. And for a lot of actors, they get to a certain age and they can't. You have methods of learning and they sort of go wrong. Either your hearing gets worse or your sight gets worse, so you can't look at the script. I mean, I memorize the look of a script very often. And I have to work at it now. I used to be able to look at a page of script and I'd know it. But it is a problem. And I always say to people that I said it to somebody the other day. I went to see a show that a friend of mine was in, and it's the most terrifying thing, really, to stand in the wings of a theatre with a head full of words, and that's all you've got. And you just hope they're going to come out in the right order. I mean, at least if you're a musician, you've got a piano that you play. Or mind you might forget that, I suppose. But do you know what I mean? Or you've got tools. If you're a carpenter and you have a bad day, the saw still works. Mind you probably cut your leg off or something. But do you know what I mean? But that terrifying feeling that it's going to be all right. And then the awful night. And there are lots of stories of people helping one another out of it. You know, somebody dies in the long run. Somebody will usually say, you know, cue them, manage to get their line into your line and help them through it. But it is, I won't pretend it isn't a fear that all actors have. I've never met one that doesn't.
Well, my friend Eileen Atkins said when she was doing Delicate Balance with Maggie Smith.
Oh, God,
Johnny
that's
Stone.
dreadful. I've done that.
And she literally, she'd been overworking and she suddenly dried completely. And she did something which I think was very brave. I mean, she broke the fourth wall. She went straight, I stepped on front of the stage and said, I don't know whether it's Piccadilly or Wednesday, who I am. We are going to start this act again.
Right. But then the awful
and of course, Maggie was furious.
Well, I was in a musical in a theatre in London, a fringe theatre where the audience were all round us. And I dried in one of the songs. And I said to this bloke, I said, I've no idea what comes next, darling. And he said it. He'd been to see the show about 4 times and he knew it better than me. So we then had a running gag all the way through the show saying, what do I say next, Pat? Well, I think we should say that a bit different, you know. And it was lovely, but I've gone off in weekly rep. When I was here, there was a director called Dole Luscombe, who was our director, and he would never have a prompter. I think it was because he knew that he was doing his version of the play and he didn't want anybody to see, because he made up all his lines. But anyway, he wouldn't have a prompter. So if you dried, you didn't get a prompt. And you had to make an excuse to go off stage and have a quick look at your script. Oh, I think I'll go and prune the roses. Quick look at the script. I used to have scripts all round the edge. That was in Shanklin. It was terrible, this awful man. And he would be waffling on about nothing.
Isn't the most irritating question that actors are asked?
How do you learn your
Yes.
lines?
How do you remember all those words?
Well, it's our job. You know,
Yes,
that's the answer to that. With a lot of difficulty, is the truth. The worst is musicals. I mean, Sweeney Todd, which has got the most amazing orchestration, huge orchestration. And if you dry, of course, the music carries on. There's nothing you can do, and you can't...
And sometimes quite difficult because the lyrics are just so intricate.
Absolutely.
Right. Any more questions?
So, Dame Sheila, thank you so much for sharing something of your life and your work, and it has great resonance with me, particularly as a woman. I think it is applicable to life other than life in acting, what you said. I'm now in my 7th decade. I'm just wondering, looking back on your long life, if you could choose a favourite decade of your life, which one would it be and why?
Decade. Oh, I don't think I've had a good decade. I can't. I never can. I've been blessed to love 2 men, which is so lucky. I'm coming here, I always remember my first husband. He was aircrew during the war. And another reason why I voted Brexit, because, you know, he had a terrible time during the war. I think in a funny way now. Isn't that funny? I think now because I don't give a damn.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I walk around with no makeup on. I accept help. That's my big step since 90. Somebody offered help to get me on the ferry and I accepted it, whereas normally I'd be, no, I can manage. You know, and I'm very listening to everything. I'm very aware of every lovely moment and every awful moment. But my worst thing is my frustration that we haven't done better. And I worry about our children. There's a big problem now with education because they've had that awful gap, the kids, when they didn't go to school. I'm not talking private school mainly. I'm talking state school. And they've lost discipline. I've got a grandson. I was so proud he was a teacher. And he's given up because he said it is impossible. If they've got half the staff they need, the building is falling down, and the children are out of control, and he hasn't got the time to cope with that, with all the other things he has to cope with. And he said, I'm failing as a teacher, Nana, and I've got to move. But the most important people in our world are teachers. Hands up anybody is or was a teacher. Round of applause for them. I mean, they are, in my mind, they are the most important people. We need to educate ourselves and others, especially with social media, because we give them bad information very often. We've got to learn to decipher what's good and what's bad. And the teachers are in a terrible position of dealing with all sorts of problems with children. And in some areas, I have to say, parental control has broken down. And by parental control, I mean any kind of, I don't mean mother and father necessarily, but I mean authority in a child's life. And I think teachers, nurses, and care workers, I didn't because I knew it would happen, but all that clapping on a doorstep that went on, and now it's degrading them. We don't value people enough, the people that work. We did during lockdown. Dustmen, somebody said to me once, oh, I actually talked to my dustman. Now, I have regular weekly talks to my dustman.
Me too.
She'd obviously never done that in her life. Oh, I talked to my dustman. He's very interesting. He kept us going. I mean, we'd have been up to here in filth during lockdown if it weren't for the dustman.
Any more questions?
Or statements, or disagreements, or arguments.
Come on, be feisty.
Be angry.
Be cross.
Say, shut up, you silly woman, you're just an actress. That's what most critics say.
Hi. Sheila, I'm just curious. Fame, do you ever wish that you weren't famous? And has there ever been any sort of negative times in your life? I know we're sort of pleased that you are here, but I just wonder for you personally, you know, people staring at you in the street, or do you ever get used to that? I'm just curious.
I just like people putting their arm around me and demanding a selfie, that especially during COVID, but that's not my favourite thing. No, I'm very grateful, and when people get aggressive, it doesn't matter all that much. But I make sure that my life is as normal as possible. You know, I really do. My family and my life has always been important, and I mix with all sorts of people. I don't just mix with actors, although actors are lovely. I mean, honestly, actors are I get so angry when they're called lovies and dismissed. They're actually the best informed people in the world. If you play a part, you have to get inside the heart of that person and the mind of that person. So I think actors know more about humanity than most people do, actually, and shouldn't be sniffed at. And they're good company as well.
You talk in the book about sort of the very close friendships you form pretty much on a temporary basis, really, but while you're making a film or while you're doing a play,
Yeah.
there is this the heightened intensity of the camaraderie of all being together.
Yeah. That's very true. We have these, you get incredibly close, either in a film or in a play or anything. They become your family. And then you move on. And sometimes you meet them again and sometimes you don't. But it's very intense. I mean, particularly, imagine if you're playing a love scene on the first day, and you have to be open to a relationship very quickly. I slightly worry about offices going out of favour, because I do think one's work life. I remember my mum was working in a shop once, a big store in a place called Erith, where we were living at that time, and I went to pick her up one day, and I went into the staff room, and she was singing Knees Up Mother Brown with these women in the staff. I'd never seen my mother behave like that in my life. And she was appalled that I was there, because she had this persona in the shop of being a very lively, funny woman, and with me, she was a pretty strict mother. Do you know what I mean? And I think that offices have the same sort of thing, I imagine, or the few offices that I've been involved with. I think your friends are almost the most important thing. Now I'm old, my friendships are probably, I mean, your families have their own families. They have their own worlds, which you're on the fringe of. And you have to mind your own business sometimes over things that you would like to interfere with, but you have no right to. My daughter had both my daughters have had cancer, but one's had very, very, very serious cancer. And I'm a great one for steaming in and finding the best specialist, and yes, I'll get your hair done and all this. And I couldn't do that because I'm not her direct family. She has a husband and she has 2 children. But I was busy researching quietly behind the scenes. But your friends, the ones that you stay with, I think you should drop friends if you get bored with them, or if they get bored with you. I really do. I think you end up sometimes when you're dying with lots of friends that you could have done without. Do you not think? No, seriously. Do you know, you get friends who pick on you or something, and you've put up with it all your life. And you think, well, why am I friends with this person? Particularly when they get older and nastier. So I think I'm going to tell an awful friend story now. When my first husband was dying, and it was pretty gruesome, and sitting with me was one of my dearest, dearest friends, who's gay. And not only gay, but very camp, called Tony. And he loved him as well, very much, my husband. And we were distraught, absolutely distraught. And then we had to go, in those days, I don't know whether it's quite true now, but you had to go to the births, deaths and marriages place and register a death yourself. So Tony and I, after Alec had died, we trailed along to this office, sitting there in the heat, and the births, deaths and marriages man came out, and suddenly he went, "Are you the happy couple?" Absolutely true. And there's 2 lessons in that. First of all, what a dear friend he was. We were on the floor shrieking with laughter. And you can laugh in desperate moments. That becomes a thing that I mustn't laugh because somebody died. And yes, you can. You're permitted to do that. And also how important friendships. I wouldn't have wanted to be with anybody else but Tony. And Tony died of AIDS. And he was in America. And they flew me over to be with him. And I've written a novel. One of my books is a novel, which is about a relationship between a gay woman, a gay man, and a heterosexual woman. And it can be a wonderful relationship. Friendship can be any combination, but there are some people that will be always with you. They will always support you, and you will be one of those for them as well. Terribly important friendship. Cultivate your friends. Don't neglect them when you get married. I had 2 very demanding husbands, and I therefore was apt to neglect my friends during that period, because neither of them liked people very much. John wouldn't have anybody in the house. No.
Well, he didn't like cooking,
Dinner party,
did he?
are you kidding? No way. So my friends just didn't, he was so miserable anyway, they didn't come. So, but then afterwards, I cultivated my friends again, and it was lovely. It was lovely. I'd rather have had John, but it was lovely.
On that note, what I'm going to do is, I think that Dame Sheila is going to be able to sign books.
You
isn't
call
it?
me Sheila, don't you?
Yes. And so you can go and buy the book first, which I encourage you to do. And I rather hope there are more of Sheila's books up there. Have we got the two of us, I hope, which is a wonderful story of Sheila's marriage to John Thaw. I've read them, I've gulped them all. I've loved reading them. They are beautifully written and they're bloody funny. And so please can we all say thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Can we leave now? Thanks. Bring me hard, hold it. Hold my bag. Just sit back.